Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. One of his advocacy to unlock the mysteries of your soul and past life regression, other than Mr. Craig Meriwether.
Hello, Daniel. How are you doing?
I'm fabulous, fabulous, Mr. Craig. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, I'm a hypnotherapist. I've been working the last 12, 15 years, I guess, maybe at this point, focusing on people's issues with trauma and even maybe pain control, healing acceleration, and that kind of thing. And you're only using the power of subconscious mind. This is different than talk therapy. And I know there's a lot of baggage and misconceptions and myths, unfortunately, about hypnotherapy. But it's a wonderful, extraordinary way to use the power of your own subconscious mind to create healing. But what's always fascinating about this work and why I really got into it was the more spiritual side of it, the more esoteric side of it, and past life regression. And so, just whatever you'd like to talk about, Daniel, it's kind of a big, huge topic, and
Yeah.
happy to answer whatever questions you might have.
Yes, indeed. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Craig. And today let's talk about the science and mysticism of past life regression. So tell us, for our listeners who are new to this, how would you define past life regression from a scientific perspective, and how does it differ from mystical or spiritual definition?
Well, I don't know that it differs too much. The idea around past life regression is the idea that we return to this earth over and over again for learning, for growth, to develop as souls. Sort of like we start off in the first grade and we want to get that master's degree in life, the universe, and everything. And so, in order to do that, just like in school, going from first grade to 12th grade and then on to getting your bachelor's degree and your master's degree, you continually add on to your experiences and your education and your training, become more expert at whatever it is maybe you're in need of experiencing and learning, maybe unconditional love or compassion or empathy or something else. And so, in terms of why past life regression might be useful to people, one is just it's an interesting, to gain insights about where you've been, who you've been. Are there threads between lives that may be important to know about that may help influence uh, you in this life? But there's also the healing around maybe past life issues that revolve around love, that revolve around relationships, that are abundance, wealth, parenting. And if there's been trauma in a past life, maybe a death that was quite traumatic and may have clung to you in a way that needs to be resolved in this life. And so, in terms of the science behind it, I know I'm supposed to talk about the books that influenced me, and maybe I'll do that real quick. We can talk about it a little bit more in depth later. But the work of Michael Newton and Journey of Souls and his book Destiny of Souls, and where he worked with thousands of people over decades about their experiences of not only past lives but also of spirit world, what he called life between lives, that time where we're just a soul in between incarnating on Earth. And so, in terms of the science, there's decades upon decades of work with other people, thousands of people that have similar experiences of what soul world is about. And in terms of the biology of what's going on in the body, within the brain, the science behind time and consciousness and memory, the ability of who know how to and have the skill level to do remote viewing, which I think a lot of us, probably have if we have the patience and the time to train ourselves to do. But the idea that consciousness is non-local, meaning where it's not held within the present of the skull. It's not part of the brain. Consciousness is something outside, maybe even of this body. And the brain is more of a receiver transmitter, as some of the research has been showing through the last 10, 15 years or so. And if this consciousness is not kind of locked down into the skull or into this body, can it move to other places around the world, not around the universe? As so much information has come out about the remote viewing experiments done by the US government and the Stargate program and other programs since the 1970s. And since those programs they're spending millions of dollars and years, decades of work, and they wouldn't have kept doing that unless they were getting some decent results from it. So there's lots in terms of evidence, maybe some of it circumstantial, maybe some of it more solid, that show that yeah, it's not lights off when we end this life, but that we continue on and maybe even return again and again in different incarnations in different times, maybe not necessarily in chronological order, a linear order of year 0 to year 2025 or 3036, but that maybe and I'll live this life, then maybe I'll go back to the 600s, and then maybe I'll go to 35, 32, and then I'll go back to 1879. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're moving in a straight line like we're experiencing time here on Earth, but maybe we can jump to different lives and different time periods, and even the theories of time and space that all those lives are happening right now, and that there's multiple Craigs out there living multiple lives in different times in different places. Or maybe there's multiple Craigs living life here. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I can tap into the Craig that's still back in 1970 or 1980 and gain information, gain insights that might help me in this life.
From a neuroscientific standpoint, what's happening in the brain during the PLR session? How do you distinguish between a memory constructed by imagination and one that is being recalled?
Yeah, a very great question, and something I touch upon in my own book, Past Lives Guidebook. How do you know whether believing that past lives are real or not? Well, let's believe that they're real. How would you know that what you're experiencing is not conjured by the subconscious mind, as opposed to being a real memory? And I guess in and of itself, maybe you can't. And so, what I focus on specifically in the work I do with people is the healing that needs to be achieved. And so, whether you're experiencing a real past life memory, or uh, maybe there's aspects of that memory that are being created by the subconscious mind to facilitate healing in a more symbolic or metaphoric way. In and of itself, maybe I can't prove one way or the other, but it's about the healing. And if that's center point, and that is most important to the experience the person is having, then in and of itself, maybe it doesn't matter so much. It's not unlike maybe if somebody's having an issue, let's just for the example, somebody's dealing with some anxiety that they feel happened sometime in childhood, and you do a past, or not, but like a regression back to childhood when they're in, 10 years old, and they have this recollection of being bullied or maybe not doing well on a math test, so they got in trouble, something like that, that now causes anxiety around tests or being in front of people, uh, or aggressive people. Well, is it true? Is it not true? Or is it about being able to heal that issue so their current life and their future life will be more at peace and more calm, and this issue is resolved? Is the subconscious mind creating the issue around the math test or the bully in order to have a way to resolve the anxiety? And in and of itself, is it true or not true? Well, you'd have to have cameras and all sorts of forensic evidence to go back so many years to figure out whether it's true or not. But maybe just lean into the healing that can be achieved from it, and the results that come from that, from resolving it. In and of itself, though, is very interesting that, okay, well, let's say it is a conjuring of the subconscious mind. Well, why that? It's the Carl Jung ideas. Is like, well, sure, maybe it is a metaphor, an allegory, or storytelling, or a symbolism of the subconscious mind. But why is it that allegory? Why is it that story? What's important about it to you that you created that memory of a past life? Why that specific past life? Why that time? Why that experience? What can you learn from it? And is that coming from yourself? Is it coming from outside of yourself? If consciousness is non-local, are you picking it up from somebody else? Is it somebody else's experience, part of the collective unconsciousness that maybe a bunch of people need to create healing around? So it's I think it's a question. It's an extraordinary great question, Daniel, but I don't know a question that can be answered, and maybe until we get more evidence around past life. But even again, even if we had you know big time evidence that past lives do exist and you can access them, how could you ever prove one way or another that the experience you're having is the actual past life, maybe somebody else's past life, part of the collective unconscious, or a manifestation of the subconscious mind to create healing? So, that's why when again, I'll go back to, then the most important thing that people need to ground themselves in is the healing, or at least the insights and discoveries that memory will give to them for this current life.
What do you consider the most compelling piece of scientific anecdotal evidence for the validity of past life memories?
Well, I think a lot of that would come from the people who are able to give scientific and historically valid information from their past life experience. One was in the 1930s, uh, a woman who changed her name to Om Seti, uh, but she was an English young girl who, I think she fell downstairs or something, got traumatic brain injury. But when she woke up, uh, she had extraordinary knowledge of all things Egypt, and she would even go to the British Museum and correct the docents on what they were saying about a lot of the Egyptian artifacts. She even moved to Egypt, and there's articles and a few books written about her. And when she moved to Egypt, she would actually be able to point out areas where archaeologists could dig, and they would find old buildings or remnants of a city, because she'd point, so yeah, that's where the building used to be, that's where the fortress used to be. And they would dig and they would find things. And so she had an extraordinary knowledge of Egyptology that, yeah, say some you could find in books, but we're talking about the 1940s and 1950s. It's not like there was a lot of information out there that a you know commoner off the street could just access. And so she knew a lot of that information. There's other people who have experienced extraordinary detailed information that could later be proven. And in fact, that's the whole basis of Dr. Brian Weiss and his work. And people may know him from his most famous book is Many Lies, Many Masters. He's written many others. But the reason he got into that, he's not a very, well, wasn't a very spiritual person at the beginning. He's a very left brain academic. He got his bachelor's degree in chemistry from Columbia University. He got his medical degree from Yale, went into psychiatry, was head of psychiatry at Mount Sinai, or Orlando, Florida, or Miami, I guess Miami, Florida. And he was working with somebody who had extraordinary anxiety, working with her for a year with talk therapy and psychotherapy, and doing some regression work with her. She went back to a past life. Well, he didn't believe it, but he thought, well, she's creating healing, maybe more like that Carl Jung, the symbolism and allegory, storytelling, the subconscious mind, maybe creating for healing. So he went along with it for some sessions, but she also started dropping. I think she was also back in Egypt too. And she started dropping information that could be factually checked as accurate. And this was 1980, so there's not internet that could look this stuff up, but very detailed information that the quote unquote common person shouldn't have known. And he started researching it and finding out it was accurate. And she also started dropping information about Dr. Weiss's personal life. She was gaining information about him while she's in this state of trance about his own life, that he had a child die very young, about a year old, and wasn't information people knew about. There wasn't any obituary. And she knew a lot of this information, and he got to a point as a left brain academic that he thought it was true. And in 1988, he released Many Lives, Many Masters, and he sort of kind of set a fire around the past life, modern past life regression movement. And it kind of all starts with him because the evidence he was convinced that past lives are real.
Indeed. And some proponents link past life to concepts of quantum physics, like no locality. Is this a legitimate scientific bridge or more a metaphorical one?
Well, the whole idea about non-locality of the conscious mind, if that's the question, is is there's a lot of evidence coming out. People are legitimately researching the idea that, again, consciousness is not locked within the skull and within the brain. And there's so much information, again, about being able to do remote viewing, move your consciousness across the world to other parts of the world to, again, gain information. This was done by the Soviet Union and the American government during the 70s and 80s. I'm guessing it still is. They claim that they've shut it down due to kind of the embarrassment that they're doing this kind of ESP, metaphysical kind of research. But again, they wouldn't have continued that research if they weren't getting results. And a lot of it I listed in my book, Past Lives Guidebook. But there's so much research you can look just up on Google, googling remote viewing or the Stargate program, and the evidence that people were getting that they could remote view not only a place around the country, around the world, but they can move forward and backwards in time as well. You know, in fact, there's even an extraordinary document you can find by Googling it, and you can find it. And it's on the CIA.gov website. This is on the actual CIA official website. It got released due to a Freedom of Information Act that we have here in America. And this document got released. That's a transcript of a remote viewer and the remote viewing Mars a million years ago. And so the people who were skilled and talented in remote viewing would come in for their day's work or their day's viewing. They'd go into one of the rooms and have a monitor or kind of facilitator to help ask them questions and focus while they're in their trance state. They open up the envelope to see what they're supposed to be working on that day, and it says "Remote View Mars 1 million years ago." And it's quite the extraordinary document of beings, uh, basically Martians, back on Mars who are leaving due to environmental concerns. Pyramids on Mars is quite extraordinary, and even to the point where the facilitator, the monitor, asks the remote viewer to engage with one of the beings there on Mars, and this remote viewer seemingly has a conversation with this being on Mars who lived a million years ago. This is a real document. You can Google it and find it on the CIA.gov website. I'm sure maybe just CIA Mars remote viewing, something like that. You'll find that document and read the entire transcript. It's quite remarkable. Now, in and of itself, again, I can't prove that that's a real thing. That person was remote viewing, but considering the other things they're able to remote view and prove true, including secret Soviet Union, submarines that were being built and underground bunkers and all sorts of things that, well, maybe maybe it is true. It's quite extraordinary.
Mr. Greg, what would be your short-term and long-term goals?
Hmm. Oh, fantastic question. Short-term goals. I'm real fascinated moving more into the spiritual side of this work because of Zoom and virtual sessions. I'm more able to work with people in this way, so I'm trying to make it a little bit bigger as a part of my practice. It's a real joyful way of making having a career of helping people past life regressions and life between lives and going up in the spirit world. And so the short term is just to focus more on that. I'd want to get do retreats, maybe around the world. I think that'd be real fun and to meet people face to face. But in terms of long term goals, I don't see why I would ever need to retire from this. I just want to keep doing this work. It's extraordinary fun work to do. I mean, I just actually did a workshop with Brian Weiss this last summer. Man must be 82, 83 years old, and he's still doing workshops and still loves doing the work. And because again, it's a joyful way of just making a life and helping people in this way. So I think short term and long term are a little similar. Just wanting to do more of this in any way possible, whether it's one-on-one sessions over Zoom or retreats in cool places around the world or something else.
Mr. Greg, good luck to your goals and looking forward for more success. And
Yeah.
what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
That would be like me. Um,
A
you know,
therapist.
yeah, if you're interested in being a therapist, one of the best schools out there that I went to is the Hypnotherapy Academy of America. When I went there, people were coming from around the world to attend. I think now because of the issues with COVID some years ago, I think a lot of you can do it online. Maybe it's all online. I'm not sure. Uh, so it makes it a little bit easier. It's an extraordinary school, though. It's not just video trainings that you do whenever you feel like it. It's 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and it's quite extraordinary work. And the reason I picked that school specifically is because not only the extraordinary training you get, 500 hours, so 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday for 2.5 months. But the last module, and that's all clinical hypnotherapy and medical hypnosis, things like that. But the last module, last 2 weeks, is past life regression. Now there's other trainings, the Dolores Cannon training, the quantum hypnosis, and other people training in past life regression work. Uh, that's the one I really liked because you get this great foundation of hypnotherapy. So it's not just learning how to take people back into a past life, but what happens if it's intense? What happens if there needs to be resolution or some sort of healing around that past life? What are you supposed to do? And that's where that extraordinary training from uh, the Hypnotherapy Academy comes from. But yeah, if you want to do that, and of course, just reading, whatever books you can get your hands on, of course, is super important as well. I promised myself I wouldn't buy any more books because I have a stack full by my bedside, and last week found another one I needed to get a hold of. So I bought another book last week. So just the more information and research you can do, just keep going.
Read,
Yeah,
people, every day. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey, Mr. Craig?
absolutely. I mentioned him before, Michael Newton, Journey of Souls, one of the greatest books I've ever written in relation to this work. The follow up, the sequel is Destiny of Souls. Find those books. They are incredible insights into this work. From decades of research he was doing with thousands of people. So, two incredible books right there. Volume 1, Volume 2.
Thank you for that recommended books, Mr. Craig. And tell us, for a mystical perspective, what is the ultimate purpose of reincarnating and having access to these memories? Are we meant to resolve karma or is it something else?
I think I think it's both of that. Yes, definitely to resolve karma, but to learn and to grow and to develop. Again, I think we probably all start off as little baby souls, and I know that sounds odd, but according to again the Michael Newton information that you gain from Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, it seems like we get put in these groups, these soul families, and we move together, moving up the ladder, moving up the grades uh, to learn more. And it might not be too unlike learning math. You start off in the first grade, you start off in 5 years old, 6 years old, learning 2 + 2 = 4. And then in grade two, as you get older and more experience, you learn about multiplication and division. Then in the next grade, long division, and then fractions. And then as you're growing older, you're learning about algebra and trigonometry and calculus until finally you're getting your master's degree in mathematics and you're doing those crazy equations. You see the genius people writing on chalkboards. Uh, I think that's the way it is. We're starting off learning about love. So you can imagine starting off learning about love in the first grade, and what are you going to know by the time you get your master's degree in unconditional love or compassion or empathy? And then maybe you learn that, and then you go back to the first grade to start something else. I think it's just this extraordinary way of using the simulation, this computer simulation of Earth, if that's what this really is, as a way to gain more insights in how to be a better soul and to be a better us.
Mr. Craig, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in third season, and movie 101 review, music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Craig, if you could leave our audience with one central transformative idea about nature and self based on the past, what would it be?
I don't know that it's so much based on the past, but what's always been important in my life that's helped me a lot is what you practice, you get better at. What is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. So even just as advice for this current life is what are you doing over and over again? What are you practicing? So that becomes paramount in your mind. It may be you're practicing fear or anxiety or anger. Well, if you want something different, you're going to have to practice something different. So what you practice, you get better at.
Mr. Craig Meriwether, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Well, yeah, the Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy.com is a great way to find me. The recordings you can find there, the book, Past Lives Guidebook, you can find there and get it on Amazon. Excuse me, find it on Amazon. And I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Craig Meriwether because if you support him for sure, more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Craig, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.